Hello, everybody. So, what an amazing buy for strategy. MSTR under the hood is performing like never before. Yes, the stock price, will do whatever it does over the short term. It's complete nonsense, this stock price over the short term. Same for Bitcoin, by the way. But over the long run, this is a company which is performing under the hood. They bought 8,178 Bitcoin. That's very impressive. They increased the yield to date by nearly 1% or something like that. So pretty darn outstanding. They're likely to meet their guidance. They're growing Bitcoin per share. Of course, what is even more outstanding about this buy is, on the one hand, we expected about 715 million from STRE, right? From the STRE IPO in Europe. Wildly expected. This is great, but this is not the bigger news. The bigger news is Stretch. The bigger news is how much money they were able to raise via Stretch. They raised $131 million with Stretch. I was never expecting it to be this high. This is much higher than what I was expecting. I was thinking 50 million or something, not 131. This is outstanding. So we're gonna focus on Stretch and see what's going on. So they in a beautiful 3.6 days, exactly 3.6 days last week. You can't see Monday, but Monday was flat, just like Tuesday on that chart. They were able to raise $131 million in 3.6 days, and Stretch really behaved like a stable coin. It was beautiful. It kept ATMing, up to 20 times a day ATM. So, and then of course, everything started breaking down. Stretch started, depegging from the $100 mark. Why? Because that's exactly when the Fed odds of a no rate cut started winning. Right? The Fed about Thursday afternoon is when the market freaked out. There would be no rate cut in December, and that's when Stretch, this instrument, started depegging from the $100, and that makes sense. And that's very unfortunate for strategy, and that very unfortunate for everybody that we have a stubborn person at the Fed who keeps continuing the flood, to hurt America. Anyways, I hate it so much. We should have a 100 basis point rate cut right away. This is insane that we have this bluff at the Fed. But anyways, the point is, it probably depegged from $100, probably because that's when the odds of no rate cuts started winning. But if you and so that probably means at some point strategy will have to increase the yield of Stretch by another 25 basis point in order to make up for the drop in interest rate, the drop in SOFR that we were expecting in December. But anyways, the point is, eventually this will go back to 100. So let's assume that, and let's assume when it goes back to 100, we ATM every single day. So if you do a simple rule of three, that would be $182 million over 5 days. $182 million bucks. And we know that there are 48 ATMable trading weeks. He can't do it the week before earnings, but he can do it on 48 weeks out of the year he can ATM. So if you assume he's going to do 182 million times 48 weeks, that's 8.7 billion USD. So given that they have 61 billion worth of Bitcoin right now, 8.7 billion USD is what they can reasonably raise, assuming these levels are maintained. And by the way, this instrument is just getting started. I think these levels could be higher than that, right? These levels could be higher than that. So what is your basic forward yield right now with the success that he's had last week, and assuming that success continues? And by the way, last week was a really bad week for the markets. So think about that. He was able to do that on a really, really bad sentiment, extreme fear everywhere. He was able to do 131 million over 3.6 days. So that means that if you were to extrapolate that, we're extrapolating that right now to a full year, 8.6 billion, what he would raise over a full year divided by 61 billion. So that's how many Bitcoin he has. That's a 13% forward Bitcoin yield. just on the current levels of stretch alone. This is unbelievable. This is the killer product that really they've been wanting to have. This is the iPhone moment for strategy, in my view. And so that's why he was smiling so much on that interview, because he may be right when he said, they could do $1 billion a week for this. If they did $1 billion a week for this, you could have a yield of 80%, 90% here if they did $1 billion a week. So this is pretty darn insane. And like I said, this is insane in light of this key point, which is last week was particularly bad for capital market, including Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The stress of the end of a government shutdown, the markets dumped throughout last week, right? And he was still able to raise 130 million. Now, like I said, the reason for the depegging here about Thursday is when those odds started to move in the wrong direction, where now we have 57% expectation of no rate cut, unfortunately, and we have a 53% chance of no rate cut. Now, as you know, on this channel, I've been expecting rate cuts years ago, and now I know, I firmly believe the problem is Powell. Powell's the problem, and Powell is gone in May 26th. So my hope for a monetary policy that makes sense, my hope is for after May 2026. Now, luckily for us, luckily for me, guess what? I'll still own the stock in May 2026. I can sit on a stock for years. I am not a trader. I will still own the stock in May 2026 and beyond when the rates drop, and that thing is gonna trade well into 100. That thing in stretch in May 26, when we start seeing very big rate cuts because Mr. Dove will be at the Fed, Saylor will have to ATM so hard in order to keep that thing below 100 when we're going to have a dovish Fed. So I am so looking forward to this. When I look at the holdings, the stock market right now is totally nonsensical. It's ridiculous. I can't understand how this is trading at a 0.92 basic IMNAV for strategy. It makes absolutely no sense. Bitcoin is dumping. This also absolutely makes no sense. It's dumping at $94,000. It breached 93 quite a few times. We are still continuing the slow bleed, and the short-term price action is nothing more than frustrating. I mean, it's so frustrating. But over the long run, to me, this is an amazing opportunity. And the fact that stretch is working is absolutely outstanding. So I am just so happy about this buy. This stretch news, the stretch momentum is huge. That's why I say huge stretch momentum today. So anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice ever on this channel. Only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me next. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.